From Licking Dog to King. Chapter 7 Just a Ride. Dinner was tasteless. I patiently accompanied Shen Hualan for a drink. Zhou Hanji did not participate. Throughout the meal we barely exchanged a few words. However, his phone kept vibrating incessantly. Zhou Hanji didn't get annoyed. Instead, he responded patiently, occasionally smiling. He barely ate any food. No need to guess who was on the other end of those WeChat messages. Shen Hualan noticed this and her anxiety grew. When Zhou Hanji stepped out, she vented to me. "Shushu, what's gotten into Hanji all of a sudden? It's like he's obsessed." I could understand. After all, the old Zhou Hanji would never spend so much time replying to messages. Things were different now. After dinner, the Zhou family's driver waited outside the restaurant. Shen Hualan glanced at Zhou Hanji, still engrossed in his phone, and instructed, "It's late. Give Shushu a ride." Zhou Hanji acted as if he hadn't heard. I gave myself an out. "Auntie, I've called a car." A rare look of guilt flashed in Shen Hualan's eyes. Soon it was just Zhou Hanji and me outside the restaurant. As I opened the ride-hailing app, Zhou Hanji's deep voice reached my ears. "Let's go." I looked at him in surprise, realizing he intended to drive me home. "Thank you, Mr. Zhou, but I've already called a car." Zhou Hanji stopped, his dark eyes quietly landing on my face, and said mockingly, "What, afraid your boyfriend will misunderstand?" I didn't argue. Why not save the 70 or 80 yuan on a ride? I must admit, the comfort of a luxury car is quite competitive. Just as I settled into the passenger seat, my eyelids started to droop. I hadn't slept well for 2 or 3 days, and the alcohol made me drowsy. Zhou Hanji seemed to notice and said softly, "Sleep. I'll wake you when we arrive." His voice was surprisingly gentle. I hesitated for 2 seconds before sleepiness took over. I don't know how long I slept, but the sound of a vibrating phone woke me. I opened my eyes slightly. In my blurred vision, I saw Zhou Hanji close by. He was staring at me. But those familiar phoenix eyes no longer held their usual sharpness and coldness. Instead, they were as gentle as water. Real yet unreal. The familiar scent of soap filled my nose. The fresh scent invaded my senses in the confined space. My gaze slowly lowered, and I noticed Zhou Hanji's neatly buttoned collar was now undone, revealing a patch of pale skin and a hint of his collarbone. Like in countless dreams, he sat beside me, chaste yet alluring. But since this is a dream, why did his cold eyes suddenly flash with a hint of desire? Something felt off. The night was quiet, and we stared at each other in silence. But the dangerous atmosphere grew like mold in the dark, spreading uncontrollably in my heart. My heart trembled and my breathing became heavier. As my rationality crumbled, I instinctively grabbed Zhou Hanji's tie, pulling us closer. After all, it's just a dream, right? My breathing became erratic, and I heard myself say, "Husband." In an instant, his hot breath grazed my neck, real yet dreamlike. I belatedly tried to pull back, but his cold fingers gripped my shoulder blade. Dominant and unyielding. No, this isn't a dream. I snapped my eyes open and turned my head just as Zhou Hanji leaned in. The ambiguity ended. My heart raced as if I'd been slapped awake. I instantly sobered up. "Your phone rang." I trembled, shifted slightly, and noticed something had fallen to my feet. Looking down, I saw it was Zhou Hanji's suit jacket. I pretended not to notice and stared at the flashing name on the phone. It was a call from Yin Dong. "Aren't you going to answer?" Zhou Hanji reminded, his tone indifferent. "It's rung several times." I gripped my phone and looked out the window, realizing we were already parked outside my apartment building. I thanked him. "Thank you for the ride, Mr. Zhou. Have a good night." "You're welcome." It was on the way. His voice was light, without any emotion. If not for my racing heart, I would have thought everything that happened was just my imagination. As I glanced at Zhou Hanji, I saw him open a message from a pink cat avatar and gently ask, "Are you asleep?" I'd seen that avatar in the company group chat. It was Lin Cece. I realized Zhou Hanji's "on the way" was literal. His darling lived upstairs from me. I pinched my palm and got out of the car. It was just a dream. Soon my phone rang again. I steadied myself and answered. Yin Dong's warm voice, tinged with rare urgency, came through the receiver. "Nanshu, are you okay?" I was puzzled. "I'm fine." "What's wrong?" Wang Jia said you've been working overtime and not replying to messages. I was worried. Wang Jia was recommended to the studio by Yin Dong. Judging by Yin Dong's tone, he was probably worried I'd overwork myself. Thinking of the messages he sent during dinner and the handbag he gave me, I felt a mix of emotions. It's rare to have a friend who cares in this big city. So I suggested, "Are you free tomorrow night? I'd like to treat you to dinner." Huh. Realizing my abruptness, I quickly added, "Or another day is fine." "Tomorrow night works," Yin Dong replied eagerly. "Message me when you're done, and I'll pick you up." The next afternoon, Yin Dong arrived at the studio as promised. He wore a white embossed crewneck sweatshirt, brown casual pants and white sneakers, looking relaxed and artistic. He carried a shopping bag. Seeing me still working, he casually walked into the break room with a box of blueberries. I started to pack up. Just then, a video call came in. It was Shen Hualan. Why was she calling at this hour? After a few seconds of hesitation, I answered. Shen Hualan's urgent voice came through. "Xu Hanji is being foolish. He's bringing Miss Lin to the family dinner tonight, and I can't dissuade him." If she couldn't handle a family dinner, she'd be even more upset knowing Zhou Hanji invested 5 million in Lin Cici's project, which I had to keep secret from her. I was at a loss. On the other end, Shen Hualan continued, "Can you talk to him? He listens to you." I was speechless. As I pondered how to refuse, Yin Dong suddenly appeared with the blueberries. "Nanshu, try these." His long fingers startled me. Then I heard Shen Hualan's exclamation. "Xu, is this your new boyfriend?" Yin Dong's smooth facial features appeared on the screen. ####Chapter 8. Leaving the door open. When I came to my senses, I hurriedly switched the camera. In the receiver, Shen Hualan's voice was laced with disbelief. "Sorry, Xu, I got carried away with my rambling. Let's chat another time." Before I could respond, Shen Hualan had already hung up. I looked at Yin Dong awkwardly and said, "Sorry, that was Zhou Hanji's mother. She might have misunderstood." "Must be tough, huh?" Yin Dong's sudden comment carried a hint of concern. I looked up at him, unsure of which kind of toughness he was referring to, work or dealing with my ex-boyfriend's mother. Seeing my silence, Yin Dong handed me a blueberry saying, "It's good for eye fatigue. Eat more." I felt a bit uncomfortable and changed the topic. "It's about time. Let's go eat." Yin Dong sensibly dropped the subject. At the Japanese restaurant, I looked at the stack of plates in front of me and said apologetically, "Class rep, it's rare for me to treat, so eat more." I then politely pushed the salmon towards him. Yin Dong glanced at me and said, "Nanshu, you're too thin. Health is the foundation of revolution. If you want to succeed, you need to be in good shape." He pushed the salmon back to me. Unable to argue with him, I said, "Let's eat together then." The meal was quite pleasant, but when it came time to pay, the server politely informed me that Yin Dong had already settled the bill. "Next time you can treat," he said gently, returning my payment in front of me. I didn't agree and suggested splitting the bill. Yin Dong smiled as if he had caught me, saying, "I treat one time, you treat the next. It's still splitting the bill." I couldn't argue with that. By the time we finished, it was already 9 p.m. Yin Dong insisted on walking me to my building. Under the streetlight, his shadow stretched long and thin, and he showed no intention of leaving. After a while, he adjusted his silver-rimmed glasses and said, "See, besides writing code, there are many interesting things to do, right?" He was referring to the ring toss game he took me to after dinner. I didn't want to dampen his spirits, so I went along. He seemed to enjoy it. I wasn't used to such gestures, so I said softly, "Thank you for today. Be safe on your way home." Yin Dong, always knowing when to advance and retreat, said good night and drove away. I quietly returned to my place, went to bed early, but couldn't sleep. I thought about Shen Hualan's words. If my guess was right, tonight Zhou Hanji would officially introduce Lin Cici to the Zhou family. And I, who had pined for him for 6 years, didn't even know which way the Zhou family's door faced. The contrast was stark. Indeed, from 2 years ago, Zhou Hanji and I had taken different paths. Right now, something else was more pressing. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. "Who is it?" I asked, puzzled. "It's me." The deep voice coming through the door gap stunned me. It was Zhou Hanji's voice. But wasn't he supposed to be at the family dinner with Lin Cece tonight? Why was he here at my place? As I hesitated, his voice came again. Open the door. It was quite forceful. But why? Even if he was an investor, he had no reason to come to my place in the middle of the night. I stood there expressionless, and the next second, I heard Zhou Hanji's rude knocking. It grew louder and louder. Not wanting to disturb the neighbors, I carefully opened the door a crack and asked, Mr. Zhou, what do you need? Looking up, I met his confused eyes. The strong smell of alcohol hit my nose, and before I could close the door, Zhou Hanji pushed his way in, collapsing onto my shoulder. Wife, you're so heartless. Why didn't you leave the door open for your husband? When Zhou Hanji called me wife, his face was buried in my shoulder, and his tone was pitiful. He was clearly drunk. Leaving the door open. Did he think he still had a place here? I was angry but quickly realized this might be a misunderstanding. Calling me wife was real. Leaving the door open was also real. But Zhou Hanji wasn't looking for me. Thinking of Shen Hualan's family dinner, I guess Zhou Hanji might have had a falling out with Lin Cece tonight. After all, besides Lin Cece, no one else could make the high and mighty Zhou Hanji come to make amends so late at night. Certainly not me. I calmed myself and reminded him, Mr. Zhou, your wife is upstairs. I tried to push him away, but instead of letting go, Zhou Hanji hugged me tighter. Wife, you're still mad at me, aren't you? His pleading tone and greedy embrace ignited my anger. I gritted my teeth and said seriously, Zhou Hanji, you've got the wrong person. Zhou Hanji wouldn't relent. How mean. Last night you called me husband, and tonight you call me by my name. See, he was very drunk. I took a deep breath and said, Zhou Hanji, look up and see who I am. He slowly lifted his head, and our eyes met. I caught a hint of red at the corner of his eye. I was stunned, feeling as if something scratched my heart and swallowed my words. It was the first time I'd seen Zhou Hanji so out of control. The next second, he seemed possessed, pressing closer and pinning me against the entryway. When his lips touched mine, I saw the storm of desire in his eyes. My breathing became erratic. Everything was a mess. My heart felt like it had a hole. And the more intensely Zhou Hanji kissed, the colder I felt. I'd had enough and bit down hard on his lip. Hiss! Zhou Hanji winced, gasping in pain, and looked at me in shock. I looked at him calmly, my breathing still uneven. Are you sober now? Zhou Hanji seemed to be still caught in the previous scene. After a few seconds, he licked the blood from his lip, yanked the door open and stormed out. As the door slammed shut, I collapsed like a deflated balloon. Early Monday morning, I went to work as usual and ran into Lin Cece at the elevator. The girl had her hair in a cute bun and was texting on WeChat, looking quite happy. Seeing me, she greeted cheerfully. Good morning, senior. Her happiness was evident in her almond-shaped eyes. She didn't seem troubled by the Zhou family dinner. I thought of Zhou Hanji's disheveled state last night and felt a pang of confusion. Just then, Lin Cece's phone suddenly played a man's voice. You worked hard last night. Don't worry, I'll handle the family. It was deep and hoarse, like he had just woken up. Zhou Hanji's voice. Lin Cece probably didn't realize she had accidentally hit the speaker button. After locking her screen, she glanced at me and then walked aside to reply. As the elevator doors closed, I vaguely heard Lin Cece say, Senior, hearing you say that makes me really happy. So everything made sense now. Zhou Hanji, deeply in love, swallowed his pride to protect Lin Cece. How could the girl be sad? Unlike me, I spent the whole morning coding intensely. After lunch, the studio door suddenly opened, and a man in a suit walked in with coffee. Hello everyone, I'm Assistant Sung, here to deliver afternoon tea for the boss's wife. The voice sounded familiar. When I looked up at Sungji, I understood. He was Zhou Hanji's junior from the finance department, who admired Zhou greatly in school. Now he was running errands for him after graduation, delivering afternoon tea. It seemed Zhou Hanji's romantic side had been awakened by Lin Cece. I smirked at myself and was about to look away when Sungji strode over to me. As our eyes met, he said with a smile, Boss's wife, here's your coffee. He said this just as Lin Cece walked out of the office, lowering her head at the sound. Her face turned red and white alternately. Welcome to subscribe to my channel. Hit the bell and follow.